Okay, so first up is John. You're welcome.
Cool. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I choose to Nearform and engineer for hosting this anyway. It's actually the first Node Dublin, so it's pretty cool to be talking here about using Node and work and stuff. So my name is John Brett. Twitter handle and GitHub there if anyone wants to reach me. I'm a lead engineer at D4H Technologies, and what I'm going to talk about today is our venture into Node. Has anyone ever heard of D4H Technologies? Are the people who actually know me?
Yeah.
So what we do anyways, we provide software for emergency services and emergency response teams. So basically these are our customers, and we provide the tools for them to help them save lives. These range from pharmaceutical sites, oil and gas, hazmat teams, to public fire service or coast guards. We even charity search and rescue teams as well. And when these come to us, generally they use anything from pen and paper and spreadsheets to try and maintain every aspect of them, like their equipment and things like that. Some might have more advanced solutions using like Microsoft Access or SharePoint, but generally when they come to us they need something more specific to meet their needs. What we do is we provide them with features so they can manage every aspect of themselves, so track their equipment, alert them if something's going out of date or requiring inspection, give them their inventory at a glance, manage personnel, who's qualified, who needs training, who needs it when, and then provide like quality incident reporting. So like we link up with lost person databases worldwide and integrate with Esri and stuff like that to give them advanced mapping simulations and stuff like that. So we try to target the end user with our features, then also target their organizations to give them the stats they need so the emergency response teams can operate, and then give them the analytics they need, so stuff like where they're training versus where incidents happening. And it's funny to see how different that might happen or how far the base should be from where regular incidents take place and stuff like that. So we try to give them the tools they need to be as prepared as possible, with the goal of giving them the right data for when things go wrong. And we do that all from here. That's our offices. For anyone who doesn't know, that's the Bailey Lighthouse out in Holt. And that photo was taken from one of our customers, the Irish Coast Guard. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is basically how we came to use Node in our stack, and the different frameworks we looked at and chose, the design choices we made and the difficulties we ran into with them, pretty much how the venture went all together. So why Node? So basically we wanted to build a public API. We wanted to build mobile apps for people, like add incidents. Customers wanted it to build their own apps, potential partners wanted to integrate with us and stuff like that. But unfortunately, our code base is a LAMP stack, and like typical PHP code bases, it's tightly coupled, not too modular. It was built in a custom in-house framework, which didn't help as well. And building an API just felt like we were contributing to the size of that. We had an API prototype from previous effort at the same project, but again it was PHP. And it was custom again, so even custom routing logic and custom parsing, and it proved very difficult to try to extend that. So after trying to build more endpoints and add to it, we just realized it was going to slow us down moving forward. So we decided to start again. So this gave us the chance to experiment, like different frameworks are a possibility, and we looked at also different languages, and that's where we looked at Node, because from talks here in different conferences we're all seeing Node's brilliant for APIs, so why not try it out for this? So first we built a prototype in Express, and in only a couple of weeks we managed to replicate the existing functionality the API prototype we already had. And after a quick chat we realized Node was the way to move forward, just how quick we were able to build something in. So the initial prototype, well, it was good. It was prototyping to describe it best. We learned a lot, but there was a lot wrong. I find there was a lot of just issues using Express that were just going to cost us in the long run. It's like a huge Index.js and things like that, so trying to share resources like database access, things like that. Like cross-directory requires for like models and controllers and stuff. I found we're like working against the framework when trying to keep things modular. With infrastructure mixed with application code, which is again going to cause problems. And then I think the router is quite dangerous in Express for larger scale projects anyway. I think for your own it's fine, but moving forward you can't be guaranteed that the order your handler is going to be called in. Netflix got burned by that I think just last week. and have a good blog post about it. So we looked at other frameworks and see if any of those an improvement moving forward. Express I talked about. Restify would have probably been good, but we didn't want to rule out the possibility of going full stack with Node. And it didn't offer templating, so we ruled that one out. Kraken by PayPal was another one we looked at, but it just seemed to be expressed with extra features built in that didn't really solve the problems we had in trying to keep things modular. So we looked at Happy, that's from Aaron Hammer, the guy who brought us OAuth at Walmart Labs and stuff. And when I looked at it originally, the documentation wasn't great, although it did seem promising, but there wasn't enough tutorials and documentation to move forward. So we tried Loopback, which again seemed promising. They favour convention over code. And a lot of the infrastructure built in is quite interesting. You give them your models, your database schema, and they generate your model methods and your routing and give you documentation generation out of the box, which is quite nice. But when you try and move past that and add logic to the generated methods, you realise that you're actually looking at there's too much magic behind it, and trying to change that, you end up with something even more unstructured and trying to build something in Express or build something large. So we eventually moved back to Happy, and it's actually worked really well for us for the last about 4 or 5 months. And it's come along a lot in those 6 months or 4 or 5 months. We're seeing huge adoption industry-wide with like NPM and stuff like that as well. So some of the things we found that were really positive of it, they use a request lifecycle over ordered handling or handlers, so you can just be sure from a root definition that it'll be called with a certain URL, but you can't be guaranteed that in Happy or what will be called before or after. The expressive routing definition, so it uses a larger object to define a route. So if you're used to like app.get, it's a bit bigger to define a route, but that leads to further benefits down the line, where your code is the actual documentation of itself and allows for documentation generation of your routes. Let us focus on building like application logic instead of just loads of infrastructure, by pushing everything into plugins, and I'll explain that more in a bit. And then their ecosystem, some of the official modules or supported modules by the Happy team are really good as well. So enterprise grade, normally regard enterprise code as being an insult, but here I thought it was quite good. Like they have 100% code coverage for the whole framework, as well as all the modules it depends on. And I think that should be a minimum for anything anyway. I've seen in a talk by Aaron Hammer that after they hit 85%, every percent that went up, getting 100% code coverage, they actually discovered a new bug that would have been cost developers weeks. So it was nice that they put the effort in so we wouldn't have to. Another thing that was cool is it's secure by default. So where Express is like flexible by default, you've put effort into making it more secure. Happy with secure by default. Some of the negative points about it was it's not around as long, it's not as widely adopted as some of the other frameworks. So there was less like stuff on Stack Overflow or tutorials moving forward to try to help you out. They move quite fast and break changes and don't make things backwards compatible to try to get people to move forward. So it means tutorials get quickly outdated, and the plugins you depend on might not always be able to keep up with it as well. And if you depend on one of them, you can't upgrade your version either. And we can't always keep up with some of the plugins we wrote. So the design choices, so in trying to keep the project smaller, scalable and moving forward, because that was one of the problems with the prototype when trying to scale it up. We use this approach. So our index.js, I've looked at a lot of apps built in different frameworks, and sometimes they're like 200-300 lines long of like database initialization, how to share them, how to require different modules, and it's just code without context. So we pushed anything that wasn't config or registered in a plugin into plugins, which gives a nice simple index file. And then anything that's in a plugin, you can understand the context of the code because of the plugin it's in. Then each of the plugins are either a service or a feature. So a service would be something like database access or authentication or auditing or something like that, or documentation generation. But the features were the ones that were providing the endpoints for users. So your user, your teams, your equipment item, models and routes would all be contained within each of those. And they could either expose their own functionality or consume another's if needed. So it would be like an equipment plugin requiring member features to provide a list of members that were assigned to this item or something like that. And everything else was pushed into a Node module. And I thought this would be great, we'd have loads of Node modules built under the D4H name, but it's actually quite a small amount because the Node ecosystem is just pretty good as it is and happy cater for most of the other things we needed. So that was our index file. Obviously it's bigger now with more plugins that we've got, but it's pretty simple. Like you require a happy module, create your server, give a report, register some plugins and start. And then any of the code was buried in the plugin. You could understand what it did easily from the context of the plugin. And you can see the service and feature divide in plugins as well. Is everyone able to see that? Yeah. So that's a sample plugin. The plugin, it takes the 3 parameters. The plugin is just an alias for server basically. So anything you can do in the server, you can do in a plugin. The options were when registering plugins, you can just pass an extra options like a root prefix or something like that. And next just returns the control flow back to the server. So the first line is like just consuming another plugin, so database access. Just creating a member model, passing in the database. Then exposing its so other modules could consume, or other plugins could consume the member functionality, like the way we're using database there. And then that's just a simple root definition, so method path, that's all fine. A free handler for anything that might be done for the handler. Validation is where Joy comes in, and that's their input validation module provided by the happy team. So there we just allow 3 query parameters, 2 strings and an integer. If anything other than that is passed in, the request will be rejected and like a nice error message passed back to the user. And then the handler is called. We used promises, just found that it made error handling that much easier. So like that's a sample just to get a list of members. Calibrate was one of the modules we wrote ourselves, so just to give uniform JSON outputs, like wrap up with a status code, stuff like that. Then if it was an error, it would wrap a normal JS error, but if it was provided with an already wrapped error in Boom, one of the happy error modules, it would just pass it straight back to the user. And then basically reply, send it back. So description and tags don't actually provide any functionality, it's just code documentation, like the code document itself. But it also gives us the opportunity to use documentation generation. So if we go back to the simple server example, we had one more plugin, which was Happy Swagger. It would take all our root definitions and generate documentation for it, and interactive documentation, such as this. I think you can see it very well there, but you can see the description up in the top right was the one I had in the server, the root definition, 3 query parameters, 2 strings and integer, and then it would let you try it out on the page. And that was huge for us to give to our customers in trying to adopt and build their own applications on top. So the final results, with an API currently supporting our first mobile app. It's in both app stores, so it's pretty cool. It's a small dev team, and some of the positives from it, robust error handling, the input validation was reusable among routes and stuff like that. We've no manual documentation to maintain, which is huge. I'd rather spend an hour writing good input validation than trying to maintain docs. The code's nice and modular, everything has context and it's easy to maintain. And it was built in about 4 months. I think we've like 27 endpoints, but I'd say that's going to go up to maybe 70 or 100 or something. It's a pretty big application. And it's cool to see customers building their own applications on top of stuff you build. And like emailing you every day, they're looking for the next endpoint to be built so they can build something. So things to take away. Node adoption can work. It worked well for us. I'd prototype a small use case first. I wouldn't at any point decide we'd throw away our main code base to try to replace it with one in Node immediately. I'd do it in modular steps, and that's probably what we're going to do with this API here. I definitely recommend trying Happy. It worked really well for us, and if anyone is, come talk to me. I'm curious to see what you're building with it or how you're approaching things. But yeah, always evaluate the framework that suits you best. Sometimes it's the one you know best, but I find maybe it's actually the one that suits your team best, how it scales. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say. That's another picture of our lighthouse site, if anyone's curious. And yeah, we'll probably be hiring down the line, so if anyone's interested in working this kind of stuff or this kind of area, just get in touch. It's my email address as well. So thanks very much.
Hey John. enough, great enough. I'm interested into the Happy Swagger plugin.
Yeah.
You said it generates documentation, but there's a bit more in that. There's also kind of a playground where you can...
Yeah, it's interactive, the document. Go back to
Could you spend a couple more words on this if you have time?
Just more about it. So basically it just takes the definition of each of your routes and it will generate like a page like this full of all your endpoints. You can specify how to group them. See the members heading there. So I think 3 steps in, group them by that, so it'll be 2 teams will always be the same. And then it'll break them into different sections of members. Then basically it'll generate the API request URL from the queries you pass in. And you can try it there and then on the page instead of having to break out a REST client, so it's one built into the page.
Does the API have to conform to some kind of standard, or can it be whatever?
If you conform to just the normal happy route definition, like there's plugins like this for Express, but some of them like require like comments or annotations and stuff like that in your code to get it to generate the same thing. But because the route definition is so expressive and happy, it's very simple to do.
Thanks for the insight about the API Happy framework. What do you mean exactly by secure by default? What kind of security is provided, and what are your critical concerns about the Express.js security model?
As I was saying, security model now is, I didn't delve deep into it in Express, but I heard of problems where stuff like you have to use extra plugins or middlewares to like limit, say, API payloads and stuff like that in Express, where this is stuff that came in, like API throttling, all those type of things. They're built into Happy by default, where you have to use extra middleware in Express to cover all those holes. And like if I was unaware of one, or our team was, you know, we're caught, we're happy that would be covered by just the base server.
Express is more about HTML, right?
Sorry?
It's more about the HTML serving. Express more web framework than API.
Cool. Cheers.
This is very, very late. John, we met about full stack in London, but we also came down to Waterford for NodeConf.eu, and he was one of the winners of our prizes, which you now have.
Thanks very much, man.
Congratulations. Nice.